How was the debate?
It was nice. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Wow. So here we are also following and enjoying it exclusively. Now, still our question remain unnoticed. We want to find out also, according to the two parties, somehow went unsimilar. There is one who is saying Sabbath is no longer recognized as such. There is one who is saying again Sabbath is so much important. To us also, we are looking to the answer for many people ask questions about the Sabbath day in the other previous content with that testimony. So now let's dive into some possible questions and find out whether it can bring some similar answer, or else it can give us some knowledge to understand exactly Sabbath. What is in Sabbath? Do we have to worship on Sunday or not? I want to find out where that question is, and we reason together. Both pastors are going to be asked, and we shall hear both of them answering.
Do you worship on Sunday? If so, why?
I don't worship on Sunday any more than any other day. The early church didn't either. In the book of Acts, it says they met daily and continued in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship and breaking bread and prayers. All days were alike. Doug made reference to Romans 14:5. I didn't, because we didn't have time to get into it, but it mentions one man esteems one day above another. Another man esteems every day alike. Now, one might say, well, the man who keeps one day above another is not talking about the weekly Sabbath. Well, if someone's keeping every day alike, they're not observing a weekly Sabbath. It's the antithesis of keeping a Sabbath, is that you keep every day alike. And that's what Paul said that some were doing. He says everyone could be persuaded in their own mind. And that's what I do. I believe we're supposed to worship God all the time. In Hebrews chapter 13 it says, let us continually offer the sacrifice of praise unto God, even giving thanks to his name. There's not one day above another to worship God, because we're supposed to worship God every day. And for me to worship God more on one day than another means I have to worship him less on those other days. By the way, the Sabbath command in Exodus chapter 20 did not include going to church. If the laws that Moses wrote, other than the Ten Commandments, are not binding as much as the Ten Commandments, then going to church on Sabbath is not. Because there's no Sabbath command to go to church except in the books of Moses, not in the Ten Commandments. So, no, I sometimes go to church on Sunday.
30-second warning.
I have meetings on many nights of the week. I'll be teaching twice a day the next week, every day of the week, and that's pretty much my style. I don't really have certain days that are more important than others.
Well, I do believe that God specifies that there is a particular day to come before him and worship. If you look in Leviticus chapter 23, in the first few verses, he sets aside the Sabbath command as distinct from the other annual feasts, and he calls it a holy convocation. The word convocation is kind of like it sounds. It means an assembly, a coming together. We just quoted from Isaiah chapter 66, where he said that from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come and worship before him. And then you find the pattern of Jesus and Paul. It says, as their custom was. Custom isn't something that you do once or twice. Custom is a pattern. They entered into the synagogue. The word synagogue means the gathering. And they read the scriptures. Now, I think we can study the Bible all the time. And I think we should worship God every day. We're not contending that. But if you do what the Sabbath says every day, you're not holy, you're lazy. Because it's telling you to rest and not to do any kind of work and treat it in a special way.
Time's up. Does the Bible tell us what to do and not to do on the Sabbath?
Well, you start with the very basics in the actual Sabbath command. It says, thou shalt not do any labor. That's talking about your customary work, I think the word is used. Later, Moses defines it a little more strictly. And he said, if you're going to eat, he says, bake what you're going to bake and seethe what you're going to seethe. Nehemiah, I think it's chapter 13, he gives some of the pagans living around Jerusalem a hard time because they kept coming on the Sabbath to sell wares and things to the people. And he warned them once or twice, said, you come back, I'll arrest you. Sabbath's not a day for regular buying and selling, merchandising. It's holy time. And what I'm sharing with you is not the belief of a particular denomination. If you look all through the history of the Protestant reformers, though they may have disagreed on what that day was, they all believed that the Sabbath day was to be treated sacredly. It was a holy time. I believe we should worship God 7 days a week. We sleep every night. So we all need that kind of rest. So the rest of the Sabbath is a different kind of rest. It's a resting where we're putting aside all the cares of life and we have quality time with God. There's a lot of times when I'm in the house and I'm working in my office and Karen will say, we're not doing anything together. I'll say, I was in the office. I was here all the time. She says, no, you weren't really here. She says, so God is saying, look, I want quality time with you. And he's, it's like in the Garden of Eden. He was walking in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve ran from him. He wants to spend time with us. So the Sabbath mostly is sacred time. You put aside all the secular concerns. You try to get everything out of the way so that you can have that blessed time with God without interruption.
Doug is correct that the Bible does say a lot of those things about keeping the Sabbath. It doesn't say any of them in the Ten Commandments except the resting part. There's no gathering for a holy convocation. There's no anything like that in the Ten Commandments. There's just resting. Even when they gathered manna, they were not told to gather together on the seventh day. Just don't gather manna on the seventh day. The gathering on the seventh day is not commanded in the Ten Commandments. And therefore, if what Moses wrote is not binding, then meeting on the Sabbath is not binding. It's true, you can meet on the Sabbath, and I wouldn't complain about anyone doing so, or any other day of the week for that matter. But as far as what you're not allowed to do, if you're going to keep the Sabbath, you can't kindle a fire in your home. That's forbidden on the Sabbath. And that's actually in the same laws that say you have to get together on the Sabbath for worship. So, people can pick and choose what laws they want to keep if they're going to be under the law, but they'll have to answer to the law if they don't keep everything written in the law.
If Sabbath keeping is a requisite for salvation, what can be said about past Christian leaders and thinkers like Augustine, Wycliffe, Huss, Tyndale, Luther, etc., all of whom were exhaustive biblical and linguistic scholars? Will God hold them accountable for not keeping the Sabbath? And if not, why would we assume that God would expect us to keep it today?
First of all, I don't think anybody is saved by keeping the Sabbath commandment any more than any other commandment. People say, well, do you think that it's a salvation issue? I just say, well, you put it in the same category with the other 9. I don't think God gives us a 10% discount. Will there be people in heaven that didn't know some of the commandments? Yes, of course. There'll be people in heaven that had way too many wives. Sin is knowing to do good and not doing it. It says if you continue to sin, Hebrews chapter 10:26, after you receive a knowledge of the truth, then there remains no more sacrifice for sin. And the list of reformers that was mentioned here, all of them believed in the Sabbath. The question was, which day? But none of them said that the Sabbath was done away with. Augustine, Luther, Calvin, the great reformers, the Baptist Confession, the Westminster Confession, they all believed the Sabbath was established in Genesis chapter 2. It was still to be kept. The contention was on what day it was to be kept. So there's going to be people in heaven that maybe didn't know. There'll be all kinds of people. David had way too many wives. I expect to see him in heaven. Solomon had even more. If we did that today, well, I know I'd be dead. But, we need to walk in the light that he gives us. And I think that God wants people to learn the light about the Sabbath. I think as we get closer to the second coming, that there's going to be more digging in God's Word. I think conditions in the world are going to drive people to their Bibles, and I believe there's going to be a revival of primitive godliness that was once delivered unto the saints. That'll be keeping the new covenant Sabbath.
Well, it's true that Doug doesn't believe anyone will be saved by keeping the Sabbath, but I believe that many Seventh-day Adventists believe that many will go to hell for not keeping the Sabbath when it becomes the mark of the beast. Once there's a national Sunday law, if you begin to worship on Sunday and not on Saturday, you will be taking the mark of the beast, and certainly Revelation says you'll go to hell if that's the case. So it's not like the other 9 commandments, is it? It's quite unique. No one goes to hell inevitably for stealing. But if you're going to go to hell because you don't keep the Sabbath, then it is definitely very much a salvation issue, at least with the Seventh-day Adventist theology, as I understand it. So sometimes they'll say it's not a salvation issue in order to not make it seem like the issue that it is to them. But they believe that it's going to be the testing truth of the end times, and people who don't keep the Sabbath will indeed go to hell because they're taking the mark of the beast.
We have to consider the Sabbath day. Like, for example, they gave us the 10 Commandments,
Yes.
whereby we have to follow them according to what was written. Now, but those commandments are not the only one we have to follow. There are some rules which were brought out by the leaders. Like those rules we also have to follow. We don't know the Bible was all written, was written like other rules which are written.
Yes.
So when your pastor tells you that you have to come on this day, why don't you come on that day? We were told that you have to attend the prayers on Sunday.
Yes.
That's why we have to attend on Sunday, but even other days it's allowed to go for prayers. But according to now how we move these days,
Yes.
some people go for work.
Yes.
So when you get another day apart from Sunday, but you have to consider Sunday. Like me, I consider Sunday. When you don't pray on Sunday, at least you pray Saturday. You fix it somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so meaning Sunday, it's still taken serious. It involves in the Sabbath.
Yeah, it's very well involved. Like other people take Saturday and Fridays.
Yes.
Saturday and Fridays.
As
and,
being the Sabbath day.
Yeah, others take other days, which we don't know, because for us, we Christians
Yes.
who are following the Bible,
Yes.
nothing can separate us. We are the same. We
Yes.
all follow the Bible.
Yes.
We all follow the Bible. So what you have to do is to take the days which they tell you. Your leaders, what they tell you is what you have to follow.
Can someone go to hell when they don't obey Sabbath?
That one I don't believe it.
Okay.
Because the reason why I don't believe it,
Yes.
for us we say that our God is the merciful one.
Yes. He's
And-
not going to allow anyone to go to hell.
It's not for you to go to hell. That means you don't belong to our side, the side of God. For us who follow the Bible, if you don't, and things are very well written, and the only rule which they left to us, the commandment, mostly it was you have to love your friend as you love yourself. As when you take only one, you automatically go to what? To heaven.
You will do everything and then
Yeah,
go to heaven.
that one. If you take one, that you have to love your friend as you love yourself, even though you don't go to church.
Oh,
Yeah.
but the Bible says we should not live to congregate.
Yes, that is it. That is it. What the Bible, what it has said, that it has said like that. But if you don't go to church, because many people go to church, but they don't know what it takes them there.
We leave that for that. What we are after, the main point is here, to look at Sabbath, because there was a lot of contradiction. People are like, Sabbath is no longer important.
It's very important.
Sabbath has been left for the Old Testament during the time of the Moses. So right now we don't need. We only have to perform righteousness and move over.
That's a very big problem.
Now, if it's a big problem, can it also take a person to hell?
I'm not sure that it can take someone to hell if you don't follow that.
Okay.
It will not take you to hell.
Okay.
There are many things because it is also mentioned in the commandments that you have to consider God's day. You have to consider it. You have to leave everything you like that. You don't have to work on that day. But
It's a day for resting.
But according to the generation now, most of the people have work. They work on either Saturday or Sunday. All those days which are fixed for Sabbath, which are the people go and work. But as long as you fix some time and go check on God, check on, yeah.
And what I may say that during the conversation of the debate,
Okay.
they said that Sabbath was given to the children of Israel when they came out from Egypt, and then that time they were from hard labor. So God looked at them and said, "Oh, since these people have been doing too much labor, let me fix for them time to strictly rest and rest themselves very well. So in so doing that, he gave them that Sabbath and make it holier. Yes, for people of Israel to strictly relax and rest. Now, that was number one. That was from the proposer. Then opposer came out and said, Sabbath has been started way before the creation started.
Yes.
When the creation started.
Of course.
That Sabbath started earlier.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes. So observing Sabbath was something that it was even said that Moses spoke it before Pharaoh with the people, children of Israel, when they are still in that bondage, and addressing Pharaoh that the resting of these people was not still enough. These people are supposed to be given more value. With that deriving, it was telling us that still, before the laws, remember, these people were given laws in the Mount Nile. So already they already left Pharaoh. But still Sabbath existed. You understand?